Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, Finding the Data You Need in a World of Census Data. I'm Crystal Jimerson, a training specialist here at the U.S. Census Bureau. I want to thank you for joining us today for the From Fundamentals to Functionality, Mastering Census Bureau Data webinar series. These webinars are a great opportunity for you to learn from our experts about how to access the Census Bureau data, tools, and resources. You can register for any of the webinars by visiting census.gov/academy. Before I introduce today's speakers, let's go over a few important housekeeping rules. As mentioned earlier, this webinar is being recorded. For your convenience, it will be uploaded to our Census Academy site with all supplemental materials relating to the webinar within 30 business days. We welcome written questions during the webinar. Please submit your written questions using the Q&A panel, which is at the bottom center or the right side of your WebEx screen. Please take a moment to locate that now. Once you find the Q&A panel, make sure you choose all panelists from the drop-down menu. This will ensure we see your question. Also, we ask that you do not include any personal or business identifiable information with your question. We suggest keeping the chat panel open as we will provide key links and other resources throughout the webinar. Keep in mind you won't be able to respond to the chat. That is for us to send out links and other resources related to the presentation. My colleagues will be monitoring the Q&A. As time allows, we will answer your questions directly through the Q&A panel, or we will share your question with the presenters to respond to during the webinar. If we do not get to all the questions with the response during the webinar, we will post the questions and responses with the webinar materials on the census.gov/academy site within 30 business days. As you know, we are in a virtual environment and sometimes technical difficulties might occur. If you are having issues, try a different browser such as Chrome or consider logging out and coming back into the session. If you are having audio issues, try selecting the computer audio or calling into the webinar via phone. Now I would like to introduce our speakers, Kira Obradovich and Shaheen Dawoodpour. Thanks again for being here today. Kira, you may begin.
Thank you so much, Crystal. My name is Kira Obradovich, and I'm a data dissemination specialist for the U.S. Census Bureau. And I'm going to be giving you an overview of how you can work on finding the data that you need. The Census Bureau has a wide range and variety of data, and so we know that that can sometimes be a bit of a struggle. I'm also joined today with my special guest, Shaheen Dawoodpour, who will come on later. If you ever need any help, as we go through this webinar, you might notice some things that you're interested in looking at. There are others like me, data dissemination specialists. We're assigned to every area of the country. So please reach out if you'd like to request a free data training or if you have any data questions. You can contact us at census.askdata@census.gov or call us at 1-844-ASK-DATA. And then, of course, we also have a great website with a wealth of different courses and webinars and data gems, which are short videos that can help you learn and explore our data. I work as a data dissemination specialist. The area that I cover is the Chicago region. I cover the city of Chicago, West and South Cook County, Will County, and the states of Iowa and Missouri. And I did serve as a senior partnership specialist during the 2020 decennial in Illinois. So just a little bit of background about the Census Bureau. You might already be aware we are the government's largest statistical agency. We work on providing as accurate, reliable, and timely data that we can. And we do that through a number of surveys and programs. Much of that data is used to distribute federal funding. And our mission really is to make sure that we are keeping everyone's information private. And so that is a big focus of ours as we make sure that we produce great data for our country. Today, I want to talk a little bit about building your data search framework. This is going to actually sort of mirror what a lot of us data dissemination specialists do every day when we get data requests. It's going to help you hopefully figure out if your geography that you use, for instance, isn't something where you can find data. It's going to introduce you to some of those census-specific geographies to kind of open up that. And then we're also going to look at how you can explore our surveys and programs on our website to figure out where to get information that you might need. And then sort of as a cheat Several of our census data tools are really helpful in filtering. So I'm going to look at those with you all, and you're welcome to follow along just as methods of filters. And then, of course, we do have some additional data resources, including other ways of getting our data. And so that's where my colleague Shaheen will come in, and then there'll be some time for questions at the end. I like to always begin when I'm considering my data or my data search with census data, looking at what I call my non-negotiables. So with what I'm looking at with my data need, what is something that's really required, right? And then I also like to look at other key considerations. And there is a lot to consider when it comes to census data because all of our surveys are very different, right? We have different sample sizes, they're done different years, different time frames. So there is a lot to go through when you're looking at this. But starting off with the non-negotiables. So that might be something where I'm working on a grant or I'm working on a proposal, a business proposal, and I know that I need data from a very specific survey. So for instance, often our largest survey, the American Community Survey, is something that's required. Or you might need an exact geography, right? I'm looking at a ward and I need information for that exact geography to help design some policy. Same thing with topics. There might be a topic that's my non-negotiable. As well as how frequent, how recent is the data that I'm required to use. And then, of course, how will I be using this data? Will I be using it for informed decision making, or will I be using it in other ways? So I do encourage you as you sit down and think about your non-negotiables to also consider being a little flexible because while we have a great vast amount of data, it doesn't always necessarily line up with exactly what you need. And so just be, creative, right? When you're looking at your specific survey, could there be other surveys you might not be familiar with that could support and provide some of that information? Are there other geographies, maybe some census-specific ones you haven't heard of or haven't used before, maybe smaller ones that you could bring together to use? Are there other topics? Obviously, we use different terms for everything, right? So what you might be looking for when you're looking for telework data and you're searching our website and our tools and you can't find telework data, we might refer to that as work at home in the way that we ask it and the way that it's answered. And then same thing with frequency as well as intended use. I wanted to get a little bit into the census-specific geographies. And what I mean by that, and we're going to go through this hierarchy that you've probably seen before, some of these geographies on this page you're familiar with because they're set geographies that we all use across the nation, whether they're federal geographies or local state geographies, things like school districts, things like congressional districts. But you notice on this hierarchy, there's also a lot that might not be as familiar. Some of those being things like zip code tabulation areas or public use microdata areas. So we have a number of geographies that we use because they apply to everywhere. So for instance, places are what you might call a village or a city or a town. We have one terminology for it and create one definition. And that way we can publish this data for all of those areas in our country. And then as you'll notice in the center, we go down from the nation into states, into counties. And that's where we create these really census-specific geographies. We divide all of our counties into census tracts. Those census tracts are divided even further into block groups, and those block groups are divided even further down to census blocks. And so those are those smaller geographies that we have, but we also have some larger geographies that are very specific to the Census Bureau. And one of those is something that you can consider using when you do need to be flexible. For instance, if you're looking at a smaller area, perhaps a smaller county, or you want to put together a city and you want to look at very specific data, we have our public use microdata areas or our PUMAs. And so these are areas of 100,000 or more within each state. They tend to follow those census tract and county lines, and we update them after every decennial. And then this is a really just a great geography to use to look at very specific data if you need to know, for instance, how many 18-year-olds in a city or in a county speak a certain language and then maybe had a certain level of educational attainment. And then when you're looking back down at those smaller geographies, I talked about, sort of building your own areas. I just wanted to put this up here. These are the same images as my colleague David Craker used. I do encourage you to go and read his slides that are online from his previous Census Academy webinars, all about our geography. But you can kind of see the breakdown here on the left with the census tract. Counties are broken into them. Block groups are even smaller within the census tract. And then blocks are smallest level that are only available for decennial data. This can come in really handy when you're trying to figure out what's available for the geography that you need and filter that way. In that instance, it could be something like looking at a specific ward or neighborhood. In Chicago, you have 77 neighborhoods, for instance, and Humboldt Park is one of them. And if you were going to create or want to look at information and see what is available at that geographical level, you could use one of our great tools that I'll be showing you today to create a geography, to create a URL there that you can use time and time again. And because that tool is so good at filtering, you can then see the exact data that's available at that geographic level. And I think they're putting the link for you in the chat to pull that up so you can see how those URLs work once you build them. And the other part of this really is understanding our surveys and programs. And we have a lot. And I know this chart might be a little overwhelming just to glance at. Don't worry. This is kind of give you a picture of the fact that there are a lot of other things besides those non-negotiables, right? Besides a specific geography, besides a specific survey that you at times might need to know. And so all of this information that's on this chart is on this page. These slides have hyperlinks so you can click to see where all of this is. But this is to just kind of give you a picture of, I might be needing data. I discover that the current population survey is a good option. And then I need to consider things like how often is it conducted, right? What's the sample size? What's the smallest geography available? I might be really excited about a question on one of these surveys and then find out that it doesn't quite work and I might need to look at another one. To explore all of these, I'm going to share my screen real quick so we can look at the website together. But our website has a vast amount of information for all of our different surveys and programs. Those pages have the questionnaires on them. We also have a tool built in within our website called Census Survey Explorer that can kind of give you an introduction to some of our surveys based on some simple searches. And by going to those survey pages, you really can explore all of the ins and outs of each of those surveys. To find those, you can simply go to our website at census.gov. And you'll notice at the top of the page that it's pretty easy to find both our data tools and our surveys. They're both headings. We have our data and maps at the top, and we have our surveys and programs at the top. Some of the most frequently used ones are listed here that you can directly click on. But if you click on surveys and programs, you will note that this is going to take you to a page that right now is actually featuring Census Survey Explorer. So it's right at the top here that you can click on to use. Or you can go down, if you scroll all the way down, and we're going to list all 87 of the surveys and programs that the U.S. Census Bureau has. Of course, the American Community Survey is a common one to look at. All of the survey pages are designed so that on the left-hand side of the screen, you can navigate looking for different information like the technical documentation. So if you're looking for the definitions of the terms that we use, for instance, under research and methodology here, that's where you're going to find those questionnaires. And I encourage you, if you're looking at a survey in particular, to check out those questionnaires because they're going to show you what was asked and what were the potential answers. We actually have all of them archived here. So if you scroll down, you'll find questionnaire archive. And so you can go all the way back to the start of the American Community Survey that was formerly the long form part of the decennial. And you are able to access all of these questionnaires. So I do encourage you to check out our website as you're exploring different surveys, but I do recognize that it is too difficult to go through the number of surveys we have to necessarily determine which one you need to use. So that's really where our tools are going to come in really, really handy. And specifically the tool data.census.gov. Some of you may have been on webinars or you already use this tool. I'm going to show you it today, though, just as a method of filtration. So rather than pulling data, I really want you to understand how it can be used to filter so you can figure out what you need by starting with your non-negotiable. It's a great way, again, to find those census-specific geographies that might exist for your area, and it includes a lot of different surveys and programs. And then I'm just going to show you MDAT, our Microdata Access tool. And again, this isn't about pulling data. I frequently send people to this tool because it contains a number of our primary surveys And it allows you to really explore and better understand a lot of the questions and answers that are included. Because I think that gives you a good picture of what data is actually available. Data.census.gov has pre-crafted tables, so you can go through those and read, but I find that MDAT sometimes is even easier than the questionnaire because you really can see all of that. So we're going to go ahead and look at data.census.gov first. Please feel free to follow along as I'm going. If there's anything I'm showing, please feel free to interrupt me with questions as well, Liliana, if there's anything in real time people are asking about. But data.census.gov, that tool, its name is the URL. So you can pull that right up. You'll notice on this first page here that we have a search box underneath Explore Census Data in the center. We do in the upper right hand corner always like to point out that getting started here will take you to some more videos about how to use the tool to pull data, but we're just using it today for filters and geographies. So I talked about census-specific geographies, and it might be hard to know what you're looking at, what census tract is that in, right? And it would be very difficult to have to go to a map of all the census tracts and try to locate that. So one of the cool parts about this tool is the search by address feature that's just below the search box. If I click on this, I can put an address anywhere in the US that will then lead me to most of the census-specific geographies that exist. So we're going to look up the town hall in Cherryville, Kansas today. So 123 West Main Street is the address. I don't even need the zip, or if I just have the zip, I can use it, which is always handy. So we'll just type in the city and state underneath the address and hit search. And once we do this, you'll note that all of a sudden it's pulled up all of the corresponding geographies that we have here. So those little blocks, the very smallest that exist just for decennial data, if you were to click on this, that would add that to your filter cart and you'd be able to see exactly what data is available in that area. Same thing with block groups here and census tracts, place, right? The corresponding place. And then, of course, the other geographies like state and county that you might be more familiar with. And I just want to show you as an example here, for instance, if I click on census tract, you'll notice on the left-hand side of the screen, which is where we're going to focus today, you'll see that that's added that as a filter. And you'll also note as you're scrolling down, it shows you what surveys, it shows you what years, it shows you topics and things like that that are available for that specific geography, which is where that town hall in Cherryville, Kansas is located. Okay, so let's get back to this tool just in terms of filtration. So anytime you're in this tool and you need to clear out and you want to restart, in the upper right hand corner, we have our data.census.gov button. You can click there. That's going to clear you out, take you back to the main page. So typically when I have a non-negotiable where I'm not looking for a specific geography to start or I already know what my geography needs to be, and in general, if I'm pulling data, I always encourage everyone to use the Explore Filters button that is also right below the search box. Once you click on Explore Filters, you get this nice clean slate. And on the left-hand side, you see here we have 0 filters up at the top. That will be our little shopping cart for the filters that we add. And as you scroll down, you're going to see several different categories. So we have geographies here, we have topics, we have surveys, we have years, and we have codes. And those are our NAICS codes. If you're familiar with econ data, you can also filter by NAICS codes. So each of these things that you decide to use to filter will filter out everything below. But there are a couple of differences with the way that it works. So in geographies, always remember, and this catches even me up still sometimes, that if I'm to sort by anything, these 10 right here are always going to still show because they're the most popular and they stay stagnant. So for geographies, just always remember if you've used another filter like topic or survey, that at the very bottom of the geography category, you have this all geographies. And I'll show you this in an example, but I want to click on this now. So if you click on all geographies, it defaults to these geographic entities at the top of the page. Click on summary levels right next to it. Summary levels is always going to show you what geographies are actually available for whatever filters you've put into your cart. Topics will also go, but the categories also have subcategories. So you might see the same topics listed and think that it hasn't filtered, but it has. So you might need to end up clicking in and going into these subcategories to filter out and see what's available. Surveys as well, these are definitely going to disappear. So as we put in information, these will disappear if they're not available for what you're looking for. Same thing with years. Years will also easily disappear. You can see here that we've got our most recent ACS data, but we also have some projections, and of course that 2030 for the decennial coming up. And then the codes as well are like the geographies and the categories. You will need to click on those to see when it filters. Okay, so we're going to start off with an example to figure out how this works and see it in real time. So we're going to start out with what if my geography were my non-negotiable? So let's say that I work for the city of Milwaukee and I'm looking for information about my place, my city. In Census Bureau, it's called a place. And I want to look at it in a smaller way. And I want to look and see if I can do neighborhoods, look at how it breaks down. When you're working with a place, it's a great idea to start with census tracts. So you'll note here that under geographies on the left-hand side, we see that we do have census tracts listed here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on census tract. And then I'm going to go to the state, which of course for Milwaukee is Wisconsin. I can scroll down if I want to. I can also type in this little box here, and it's going to bring that up for me, and I can click on it. Now, for those of you that might be familiar with Milwaukee, if you are on this call, or for those of you that live in places or know of places that cross county lines, some places cross county lines. And because census tracts are broken up by the county, there's a different way that we're going to need to look at census tracts for this place or for any place. And so I really wanted to show you this as you're going through. When you get to Wisconsin and you want to look at a place and you want to look at the census tracts, don't click on the county. Go ahead and go up to this within other geographies box. You're going to see this frequently throughout. I encourage you to always explore it because it's another way of breaking down the geography that you're looking at. So we'll note here that if we click on within other geographies, there are several examples. Mainly this one being place is right here. And when we click on place, now it's going to allow us to look at Wisconsin, divided up by place, and then divided up by census tract. Census tracts are divided up by county, so some of them may fall directly within or maybe partially within a place. So I do want to make note of that, but it will on the tool as well. If you click in the search census tract box here then, and you type in Milwaukee, you can go ahead and select Milwaukee City. And as we scroll down here, you'll see that there are a number of census tracts for Milwaukee County. So if you had a specific one in mind, you could click that. But I'm specifically looking at Milwaukee as a whole. So it's fairly easy to just click the top button, which will allow us to select all census tracts. So once I've done this, you're going to note in the left-hand side of the screen here up at the top, we have this filter. And now that I've entered in a geography, we're going to see what has been filtered down. So when I go down to topics, I'm going to see that most of those topics are available that we saw before, if not all. But the surveys have become more limited, right? We had a number of surveys before, and now we're really seeing one survey here, one of our programs, the community resilience estimates, our decennial census, and then some geographical information about that area. So this then would show that these are the options that you have to look at data for census tracts. So if you want to look at it at that geographical level, that's your non-negotiable. This is what is available for the most part. And then years are here as well. So we can see here that depending on the survey, you can go back to each of these years to get data at that census tract level. And then if you click on codes, that's where you would go further in order to see what codes are available if there is econ data available at that level. Okay, so we've seen that the geographical level will filter. What about if my survey is my non-negotiable? So we're going to go ahead and clear out upper right-hand side of the screen, data.census.gov, and we're going to click on that Explore Filters button in the center again. You can also delete your filters out, but I wanted to reiterate that there's an easy way of clearing the whole thing as well. Okay, so this time, let's say that I know that I'd like to get some data from our household pulse survey. I've heard about this survey, it's newer. I'd like to see what's on it. I'd like to see if it's available at my geography. So this time, instead of using the geography, I'm going to scroll down until I get to surveys. And I will see here that there's a number of them, and here is the household pulse survey. All of these all these surveys are categories, so you can break down which type of data is available. Here we have two different types. I'm going to select the high frequency social and economic data because that's what I'm looking for. But I could have selected the other and it's going to do the same thing. It's going to filter and it's going to show what's available. So this time I want to show you that trick with the geography to see what's available. So under geographies, remember, these are not going to go away. But if I click on all geographies, and then I go up to the top and I click on summary levels. Now you'll see, and if you noticed before, normally there are many summary levels, but right now there are just 3. So we can see that the household pulse survey is available at the national level, the state level, and at the metropolitan or micropolitan statistical area. If we click further on that smaller one, so let's say that I was looking for a specific city, we can see here that it's really the top 15, the largest 15 metropolitan areas that HPS has data on. So that's one way of seeing when you're looking at a survey what geographies would be available. Same thing is true here with these topics. Some of these categories have become smaller. If I click on them, they are a little bit more general, or there's less choices here. So it's also filtered out what topics are available. And the same thing with years. Right now in this tool, we only have data from the Household Pulse Survey for 2024. Now that is one thing I want to touch on, because while this tool has a whole wealth of data, it doesn't necessarily have all of it. So I do encourage you, when you're seeing this, you see just 2024, go back to that survey page. That survey page for Household Pulse Survey is then going to be able to give you some more information about if that data is available, and if it's not in data.census.gov, where it may be available to use. Okay, so let's look at a topic. So let's try to filter by topic this time. And I'll show you up at the top here how you can clear your filters. You can click on clear all filters just beneath, or you can also X out directly out of the filter. And I'll do that since I only have one right now. So that's cleared that back out. And now we're going to go down to topics. So let's say that I am looking for information on senior citizens. And I'd like to, that's my non-negotiable, right? That is the population that I am getting information on, and so I need to put that in. We'll look at these different categories under topics, and I'll note here that we have, for instance, families and living arrangements, we have housing information, but I'm thinking about people, right? So I'm going to check populations and people. And when I do that, I'm looking through, I don't see senior citizens, but this is another instance where perhaps there might be a related term. And here we do see that older population is one of them. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And that's now going to filter everything else, just as the others did, to show what surveys and what years of data. And then, of course, what geographies are available for data specifically on older populations. And you'll see here that the ACS and the decennial, as well as the decennial census of island areas, are going to be the key surveys that have data for that topic. So that's another way of doing it. And then you also, of course, have your year. So we're going to go scroll up again under the one filter shopping cart, and we're going to X out of older populations. And then this time on the left-hand side, we're going to scroll down, and we're going to note that you can now select year. So let's say that I was looking for some econ and labor data, and I wanted to see, what the most recent data was. I might be looking for some comparisons. So I really want to discover what survey to look at for this data. I'm just going to look back here and see, can we go back to 2024? Do we have data in 2024 that's available? And when I click on that, that's where we can scroll back up above years and see that we do have all of these surveys that have data available for 2024. And that does include retail housing finance surveys, and it does include the current population survey, but I don't see economic surveys on there anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and deselect that. So you can also just do that with the years, which is handy. And then I'm going to go back down, and this time I'm going to try 2023. And once I've done that, I can scroll up, and now I can see under my surveys that I do have economic survey data. So I'm going to click on that. And I can note here that we have annual business survey data. We've got our county business patterns. So we have a lot of options available for that year. So this is kind of how you can figure out what is available, what isn't available. And you can go, like I said, you can switch between years like 2023. You can go back to 2024 and then look at those surveys again. Or if you determine a survey that you want, like the annual business survey, you could click on that and then you could go through the years and see when it's available. So I also wanted some labor data, and I do know that our current population survey includes some. So I'm going to see what's available here as well for current population survey. And I see here that for 2024, there is some information available. I'm going to click there, and I'm going to see that we have one example, and it's only information on poverty status, which I know is not what I'm looking for labor. So this is an instance where data.census.gov has some of the data, but not all of the data. And so in this instance, I'm going to take you to our app that's a part of data.census.gov, our Microdata access tool. And you can get to this by going back to that data.census.gov page at the very start. So when you're here, up in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see the word Microdata. Now, Microdata is a portion of our full data set that's used in order to maintain privacy of everyone involved that can then be used to look at very specific data. But right now, we're also just trying to see, is there current population survey data available that I could use in order to get the data that I need. So when you start out with this tool, you can select your data set so you can find which surveys are available. If you click here, you'll see that we have our ACS 1-year estimates, our 5-year estimates, but we also have all of the CPS data. We have our annual stuff, but we have our basic monthly as well, right? So we might be able to see, oh, something's asked every month. What can I get every month? When I do that, I can select here, and I scroll down here and I see, wow, I can even get stuff from last month, right? From April 2026. So then if you go ahead and click next, you'll get to a screen. This is the screen that I talked to you guys about. So this is where you're going to see all of pretty much the topics that are involved and then what might have been the answer. So you're going to be able to better understand the questions and answers on these surveys. So in this second column here, under label, you'll see here we have a lot of information. This is all of what was asked on this survey. So for instance, are you in the labor force? What's going on? Have you been working in the past year? You're going to see all of these like reasons you're not full-time, right? So these are all the things that were asked on it. But to the left-hand side of this, you're actually going to note these little variable acronyms. And there is a little drop-down column next to each of these labels over under variables. If you click on that little drop-down arrow, you're suddenly going to understand sort of how we have tabulated this data. So if someone was asked if they worked part-time last week or if they didn't, right, what were the reasons? And so there's a whole list of values here that show the reasons why they may not have worked. Maybe it was a holiday. Maybe there were childcare problems. So we get these answers, and these are what are shown. And you can do the same thing with any survey in here. So if I go back up to data set at the start, and instead I do the American Community Survey, and I go ahead and click next for the latest that we have, that 2024, I can very easily now see that we can now see everything that's on the ACS. I can see, okay, how did people answer if there were units in the structure they lived in, right? And how do we then publish that? And I can see here that some people mentioned that they might have lived in a mobile home, or someone who lived in an apartment with 6 apartments would have answered between 5 and 9. Now, the really cool part about this tool, especially with the American Community Survey, is you can use those PUMAs I talked to you guys about. So up here, if you tab over to geographies, you'll see here that for the American Community Survey, PUMA is the smallest geography that's available. That's that group of 100,000 or more. Every state's broken down into them. So often they're counties. Sometimes there's multiple ones that create a city, which you can also group together in this tool. But if you use those PUMAs, you can look at these variables, and you can, for instance, decide that you want to look at children between the age of 3 and 5. who are living in a unit, that have in an apartment building that have 5 to 9 buildings, right? So you can get this really, really narrow focus and get data on that at that geographical level. So I do encourage you, when you're in data.census.gov, if you're stuck, if you're trying to find some other information, do check out MDAT. Check out MDAT to better understand a survey. It's a really great tool for that. So we do have some additional data resources. I talked about the public use microdata. We were just looking at in MDAT, but you are able to look at all of that in our Census API as well. So you can pull specific things from there. And then if let's say you're a place and you don't see a table in data.census.gov, you don't see the data you need, you've checked out MDAT, right? You've gone there, but you really need this data for whatever project you're working on, and you do have some funding, you can put in a formal request with the American Community Survey for them to create a table for you. Then you would go through that process, and then of course they're going to make sure that what they're giving you, right, is able to be disclosed to keep everyone's information private. But then of course, if you are still stuck, and let's say that you're working on a research project and just you're not getting what you want, this is where I want to turn things over for a few minutes to my colleague, Shaheen, and he's going to go through and talk about our federal statistical research data centers. Thanks, Shaheen.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Hi, everybody. My name is Shaheen. I'm a survey statistician and an administrator for the Chicago RDC. Basically, RDCs are a stand for research data centers, and they're like a network of 37 of them currently. I know we're growing. There's going to be a few more opened up nationwide, and we're like representing the federal statistical research data centers with Census Bureau. Everything Kira just showed you are things that like are publicly available, and you can access them through various resources that the federal government has, and very specifically Census has. But what we do at the FSRDC, we provide access to the restricted access census data, or data from like other statistical agencies that have an agreement with us. This resource, like the RDCs, are providing you this like access to microdata, and they provide you with a secure facility that you can come to after going through like your background checks and have a approved proposal and a background check, come to a secure facility and access data and do your analyses. Just a fair warning here is that everything that is learned inside the RDC cannot leave the RDCs, and they need to like stay within the RDCs until they go through a proper disclosure avoidance reviews, so that we make sure that no confidential information is released. We make sure that no confidentiality rules are violated. And you always have a Census Bureau staff present inside these RDCs. Myself, I'm sitting in the Chicago RDC, but several of my colleagues are sitting at RDCs nationwide. The process to access restricted access microdata is a very involved process, and it's a very involved and very bureaucratic process that we have. But it typically starts with you reaching out to the admin that is closest to you. So if you're in Chicago area, or right now in the entire Illinois, I am your point of contact. If you're in California, we have 5 centers in California. We have 3 in Texas. We're all over the country. Reach out to the admin. They'll like help you through the process. The proposals go through something we call standard application process, or SAP. You can start by going to researchdata.gov.org. I know the website is being transferred to a new place, but I believe that this link still works. If you go to researchdata.gov.org, you can look for restricted access data that is hosted by IRS, Social Security, Census, NCHS, other agencies. You develop an application with the help of an admin. You submit the application for review. Once your application is approved, the admin will receive a letter that like your application is approved, and then like they will initiate your application for something we call a special sworn status. It's a background check that gives you access to a secure data facility. There is a there is a fee involved with certain RDCs and certain relationships. RDCs are independently funded. So in Chicago RDC, for example, if you're a member of Northwestern University, University of Chicago, Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago, or University of Illinois Chicago, the consortium membership covers these seat fees and everything. But if you're in other RDCs, it's best to like work with that admin and the executive director of that RDC to determine these fees for access and everything. Once all is in place, you have an approved proposal, you have your security clearance, you have your badge, you're ready to start your research. You will show up to a census facility that is in your hopefully hometown, and you begin your work with the restricted access microdata. With that, I'll happily take questions or not, return it to my colleagues on this.
Okay, we have a few questions. Way in the beginning, when you were going through the hierarchy of census, I guess you went a little fast for somebody to grasp the concept, but can you repeat in terms of what is census county, tract, and blocks, what that is all about?
Absolutely, I would be happy to. So every county is broken down into something called census tracts. And census tracts themselves have block groups that make them up, and block groups are composed of blocks. So if we go the other way around, blocks, and think of them, even in cities are very small. It might even be a block in a city, or in maybe a more rural area, it might be a mile of land. That's broken up so that, again, we keep people's information private, right? So it has enough people living in it. And those blocks then, when you put them together, let's say you put 5 or 6 of them together and you get that 600 to 3,000 in population that you need to form a block group, which is in the middle of the screen here, you have a set of block groups together. And for American Community Survey data, which is our largest survey, that then allows you to look at data for all of those little blocks combined. But then above a block group are those census tracts. And so census tracts are then full of block groups that are full of blocks. And those census tracts are larger, right? They have an average of 4,000, but they can contain between 1,200 and 8,000 in population. So we divide every county up into census tracts. Actually, our tool, and I can share this real quick, and I do apologize because I know some of you had questions about the mapping feature. There's a lot of great Census Academy webinars from our series specifically showing you how to use data.census.gov for that, but I would love to just show you that real quick. So under Explore Filters, when you come in this tool, if we were going to look at, for instance, if you were going to go back and look at those census tracts, or we can look at block groups, for instance. So if we go to block group under geography on the left-hand side, and then we go and we can select, for instance, Connecticut here. And we can see, again, block groups are going to be by the county, right? Because county census tract block group. If we want to go by a place, again, or if we want to go by a county, if we want to go by a county, we can go ahead and select the New Haven County. And now we're going to see these are all of the block groups in New Haven County. They have their corresponding census tract, right? So there's all the block groups that are here. Some of them are going to be in the same census tract. Obviously, some of them are going to be in different, but they're all listed here. So if I were to select all of the block groups in New Haven County, Connecticut, up at the top of your screen, you have these different tabs. So you'll see right now, I haven't selected any of them, but we have tables and we have maps and we have charts. So if we go to tables, now you're going to see all of the tables of data available for this geography, right? So you can click on different tables. You can see on the name of the table right above, it has the survey name. On the table itself, if you ever get this too large to display, do not fear. Go down to below download table where it says open the table and click on that. And then all of this data in this chart, right, that you see here can also be mapped and charted. So I can go up to the top of the screen here and click on maps. And now I am mapping this. So you'll be able to see what the block groups look like in your area. So it's going to map and it's going to show the whole state of Connecticut here. I can zoom in for some more details. And then I can see here, now we get down to these little numbers. We've got this census tract number 1602, but then we see that in 1602 we have, they're very faint here, but you can keep scrolling in. We have this first block group and we have this second block group. So these are all being able to be mapped, and then all of the data in the table can also be charted. And it can be sorted in the chart as well, so ascending to descending, so that you can see, for instance, which block group might have the highest number for this. In the upper left-hand corner, you can choose your data point. So if I want to choose 20 years, I can click on that. And now I can see that this specific block group has the highest number of 20-year-old males living in it in New Haven, Connecticut by block group. So I hope that answered your question there. Are there any other questions, Ileana?
Well, maybe it follows up on what you just demonstrated. We had a question. Can I generate a map from the results without needing ArcGIS or Tiger?
Okay, yeah. So hopefully that does. You can absolutely generate from the results. So the moment you've put in, you can also add in more than one filter. So if you have more than one non-negotiable, you can add that in, or you can just search. Because you'll see here that there's a number of tables that are available for that one filter that we added. And this is even a very small geography, right? Those block groups are really small, but we still have all tables. You can go down as well, and you can filter, for instance, if you want to look at educational attainment. This is how you would filter to find the specific tables. You could go ahead and click on another filter, and it would filter down to the specific table. You also have the option like that URL that we put in with all those block groups in that neighborhood. So if you're looking for a neighborhood or a ward or community area that you all measure, but that you don't have within these census geographies, if you start back and clear out, you also have a way, and this is something that please reach out to the data dissemination specialist because we can show you how to do this. You have a way of building a map as well. So you can click explore filters here again, and then go ahead and click at the top of the screen on maps. So you can go straight into maps before you put anything in. And if you do that, because you have no filters here, it's going to default to something called a selection map. We're going to use these little chevrons to move over. So what it's done is it's created a blank map for you, and you can actually go up here. You can add in a layer if you want to, just at the top here if you click layer. So this is where you could, for instance, look at all this, if you wanted to look at all the census tracts in your area. If you wanted to build those things, you can also search for a layer. So I'll go ahead and search here so that we can easily put in census tract. And you can zoom out, you can zoom in. So like when I built the map for Chicago, I could just, zoomed in. I now had all the census tracts listed. So if I wanted to kind of build a neighborhood, I could do so. I could do that. And I can do that simply by selecting them. So we're going to zoom in here. And then you can go ahead, and if you notice here as I'm moving my mouse around, each of these are highlighting. So all these census tracts are lighting up when I click on them. And I might need to zoom in further to be able to see all of the numbers. You'll notice here that there's some faint lines for streets. So remember that just like adding a layer up here at the top, you also can add a base map. So if I click on base map, it defaults to basic, but I like to put in detailed, because when I'm building a neighborhood, for instance, I want to be able to see those streets. And I can zoom in further. On the upper right-hand corner, there's the zoom. And I can see here that we have something on West 35th and West 39th. And if I go ahead and click on this, this little box is going to pop up. It's going to allow me to even view a profile, which is going to show me data just on that census tract, but it's also going to allow me to select it. So if I click on select, you'll note that now it turns blue. And in that upper left-hand corner where the filters were, remember, you'll see that little filter guy. Anytime you've opened up a full screen with the maps or the tables, you can always go back and click on filters to see what you have in your filter box. And you'll see here that now that census tract has been loaded in. So this is how I built that block group map for Humboldt Park. So I use those little chevrons right here. I made it full screen. I went through. I knew that my divisions were, North Ave and Chicago Ave, and I knew, to click on all of them and select them. And I can go ahead and keep clicking on these and adding them. And each time I do, it goes to the cart. And then the coolest part about this tool is once you've built something, so once you've added in whatever filters you need and you've created a map or you found a table that you like and you've put in all of the geographies that you need, this URL at the top of the page, just copy it. You can save it, you can paste it, you can share it with someone. If you paste it and hit enter in a new window, it's going to open up exactly what you have. And not only is it going to open up exactly what you have, it's going to be an editable URL still. So it's not one of those things where someone shares a link with you and you're only able to see what you're able to see. It's a full-fledged link. So once this loads, you'll note here, I can go back to these filters. This is what we just saw right here, right? And now we're seeing it again by clicking on the other tab. And I can go over to these filters. I can get rid of these filters. I can add more. So this is really helpful if you want to build a map of your neighborhood or your district or your ward.
Great, thank you. One last question, and this will probably be for Shaheen. If there is data available, but that is not online, how would we know about it? Should we be checking one of the tools to see if something else exists?
This is a good question, and if it is on the if it is available for access through our program, it should be sitting in researchdata.gov.org. That is like a best place to be. If it's not there, but you know that this data set exists, I think it's best to reach out to like the admin that is closest to you. Again, in Chicago, myself, and we can like internally ask subject matter experts or other people and see like if this set exists, and for some reason it's not mentioned in that website.
Great, thank you. Thank you.
And I'll just add to that, that if you're looking for publicly available data and you don't see it in the data tool, or if you're going through all the survey pages and you're lost, that is what your data dissemination specialist is here to do. So what I do, what Ileana, who's just helping with questions, does, Stacy, who's coordinating, we are all here to help you. So if you have any questions, you're like, I can't find this variable, I need this topic, or I need data from this year, please reach out to us because we are happy to help you find that.
Okay, great. I'll turn it over back to you, Crystal.
Thank you. Thank you, Kara and Shaheen, for demonstrating the multiple avenues to effectively build a data search framework to generate the data we seek, and also detailing that mapping. As a reminder, the questions, responses, and recording will be available on the Academy website. Before we conclude, I'd like to thank everyone who played a role in today's webinar. We thank you, our audience, for spending your time with us this afternoon. We are very interested in hearing from you on how we are doing. Please take a moment to fill out the evaluation that will appear when you exit the webinar. That brings us to a close. We thank you again for joining us today and hope you have a great afternoon.